Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a hidden system operating right beneath the surface of, well, almost every workplace. It's this dynamic of dark corporate psychology that you might actually be trapped in right now without even realizing it. You see, a lot of workplaces don't just exploit people at random. No, instead, they identify employees with high tolerance, high output, and low resistance. And then, they quietly build systems around extracting more from them. So we're going to look closely at the incredibly high cost of being too useful and why your absolute strongest professional traits might actually be working against you.
I want you to really think about your day-to-day experience for a second. What if the reason you feel drained all the time, the reason you are constantly underwater, fielding those last-minute requests and managing literally everyone else's emergencies, what if that isn't because your company is just inherently chaotic? What if it's because you, quite unintentionally, taught people how easy you are to use?
You probably approach your work with a pretty solid set of values, right? You think you're being professional, you totally pride yourself on being dependable, flexible, and genuinely helpful. You're the one who is always available, always responsive, always the first to step in when there's a crisis. And honestly, you wear this as a badge of honor. You think people respect you for it. And to be totally fair, sometimes they genuinely do. But that is really only part of the story.
Because more often than not, the workplace isn't just respecting your work ethic. They are studying it. They learn your patterns. They notice exactly what you tolerate. They watch to see how much pressure you can absorb without filing a complaint or, pushing back. They realize that if they drop a highly disorganized project on your desk at 4:30 p.m., you'll somehow make it work. And once they understand that, they silently start building their own workflows right around your lack of resistance.
Section 1. How expectation becomes exploitation.
Okay, let's dive into this. This shift from being a valued team member to an overused resource, it's rarely a single dramatic event. It happens so gradually. On day one, you help out once. It feels good. You're just being a reliable team player. But over the following weeks, you help consistently. You become known as the person who's super easy to work with. Fast forward a few months, and suddenly you're answering emails after hours. Maybe you're eating dinner, telling yourself, oh, it's just this one time. By year one, you are the designated person to cover the structural gaps that literally nobody else wants to deal with. At first, the whole shebang felt completely harmless, but that image of being the ultimate team player has a hidden accumulating cost. Because once people see that you don't resist, your flexibility absolutely stops being something they appreciate.
It starts being expected. And that brings us to a really fundamental truth of workplace dynamics. Expectation is where exploitation begins. The exact moment your extra effort is logged in the system's mind as your new baseline, you are no longer going above and beyond. Nope. You are just meeting the new minimum requirement they've set for you.
Section 2. Signals you are easily used.
So how exactly does a workplace know to target you? Well, you broadcast it. Signal number 1, you rarely say no. And listen, this isn't because saying yes is inherently a bad thing. It becomes dangerous because constant availability teaches the system that your limits are totally negotiable. Every single extra request you accept without introducing some form of resistance expands the range of what people believe they can ask of you. Eventually, the very concept of extra work just ceases to exist. It all just becomes expectation. You've effectively taught them that your boundary is a constantly moving target.
Signal number 2 revolves around your speed. Basically, you solve problems too quickly. We so often operate under this illusion that efficiency protects us, right? That if we work faster, we'll buy ourselves freedom and some precious downtime. And sure, sometimes that's true in a perfectly healthy environment. But in a lot of dark corporate systems, efficiency simply creates capacity. And in an under-resourced business, capacity always gets filled. It's like an empty lane on a highway during rush hour. Traffic is always going to find you. The faster you solve issues, the more redirected problems are going to land right on your desk. They aren't throwing more work at you to reward you. They're doing it because you are undeniably useful.
The third signal is avoiding friction. You don't want to be perceived as difficult, so you just absorb things quietly. When there's bad communication, last-minute requests, or totally unclear expectations from management, you just adapt. You smooth everything over to make it work. And while you might think you're protecting your stellar professional reputation by being low maintenance, you're actually broadcasting something entirely different. You are teaching the system that your personal discomfort is an absorbable resource. You're basically telling them that they don't need to fix their broken processes because you'll just absorb the shock for them.
Section 3. Talent versus workplace infrastructure. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when high-performing professionals mistake their boundaryless access for undeniable value.
You experience a massive paradigm shift. You become workplace infrastructure, not talent, infrastructure. High-performing professionals often feel super confused by this because they thought their immense value would create a sort of protective shield around them. Instead, capability without boundaries becomes unchecked access, and unchecked access gets overused. Your value didn't create protection, it created endless demand. When demand increases without any resistance, you transition into a dependable utility. You become something the system depends on, uses, and builds its entire foundation around. And here's the cold, hard reality. A company protects its talent emotionally, but it optimizes its infrastructure. Trust me, you do not want to be a piece of optimized infrastructure.
This leads us to a hard truth that absolutely nobody tells you when you enter the workforce. Exploitation rarely starts with aggression. It starts with convenience. The system overuses you simply because you are the path of least resistance. You're convenient, easy to ask, easy to rely on, and easy to stretch. It's definitely not because you're weak. It is precisely because you are highly capable. But that capability is literally being weaponized against your own well-being.
Section 4. How to protect your value. So how do we actually fix this? Well, the answer is definitely not to suddenly become cold or cynical. That just destroys your professional capital. You solve it by shifting to intentional access. Here's a real game changer, a 4-step framework to reclaim your value. Step 1. Delay strategically. Stop answering absolutely everything immediately. Remember, speed creates expectation. By delaying, you reset people's assumptions about your instant availability. Step 2. Separate helpfulness from availability. You can absolutely be a wonderfully supportive colleague without being permanently, instantly accessible. Treat those as two totally different concepts. Step 3. Introduce healthy friction. Not conflict, but friction. Ask clarifying questions, establish timeline boundaries, force a real discussion about priorities. Make their requests cost them a little bit of thought rather than just costing you your energy. And finally, step 4, protect your default state. Your natural baseline setting in the office should absolutely not be full access.
We're moving from full access to controlled access. Look, when you operate with an automatic response, you are letting the workplace dictate your capacity. But when you shift to controlled access, your help actually becomes intentional. People should experience your assistance as a deliberate choice you're making to apply your specific skills to their problem, not just an automatic function of your existence in the office. By introducing those timelines and clarifying questions we just talked about, you essentially force the system to respect the transaction. They suddenly realize that bringing a problem to you requires some organization and definitely some respect for your time.
Let's leave on this final thought. People in the workplace don't only use what is valuable, they use what is accessible. Once you internalize that, you really have to ask yourself this question. Are you measuring your professionalism by your availability or by how well your value is protected? Being useful is an incredibly powerful trait, for sure, but being easily used is intensely expensive to your career and honestly to your mental health. It's time to start protecting your value rather than just giving it away to whoever asks first. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take a really hard look at your boundaries this week, and I'll see you next time.